I'm Daniel Goldmark.
And I'm Leonard Maltin. And we're here watching Winter, one of the last Silly Symphonies from the year 1930, the second year of the Silly Symphonies.
And this is the last of the 4 Silly Symphonies that were done on the Four Seasons.
And with Jingle Bells as an introductory theme, that would have been something everybody recognized as they would today. So there's not much subtlety necessary in setting this up.
And we have the same kind of approach to the union of music and animation, especially in these early Sillies, where it's really that everything is moving along to the beat of the music, one way or another.
I find it interesting that these early cartoons dealt so much with nature, and we barely see anything resembling this in cartoons of today. It's as if everyone has moved indoors. Watch contemporary animation, and I guess it reflects contemporary life for young children and even older children in our society. They're playing video games, they're on the internet, they're not out enjoying the glories of the seasons.
And also think about the fact that Disney and his sort of love of the outdoors, but just the rural themes in his cartoons. We see so much happening in the countryside. You know, we can think about this in terms of how much cities have grown, how much the countryside has shrunk, that so many of these cartoons are about the outdoors and about animals. And of course, it certainly lends itself to the fact that there's very little narrative because we aren't given any specific characters that we need to be identifying with.
And here's the Skater's Waltz. This is kind of like a medley of greatest hits for anything to do with the season. And this would have been part of the repertoire of any silent film accompanist just a few years before the coming of sound, wouldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This piece, I think even now, years and years and years later, people still hear this. I'm sure it's played at ice rinks all over the country. It's a great shot right there.
And again, the synchronization. Here, even a year into the Silly Symphonies, the concept of marrying music and action is still very, very dominant. In fact, it's kind of amusing to think that this eventually became known as Mickey Mousing.
Right, which was not seen as a particularly good thing. There's a question as to who exactly coined that term, but it was a derogatory term as to, having exact synchronization of music and image, calling too much attention to the music. Well, having too much attention to the music in cartoons is not a bad thing, but when you're watching a early film, a Max Steiner score, not something you really want.
It's all a matter of context, isn't it?
Absolutely right.
It's a lot of characters on screen at one time.
And nobody with a name, no one I recognize.
No, I don't think he's not Elmer Elk or anything like that.
No.
Or is that a ram? It's probably a ram, isn't it? There's a Mickey-ish bear.
Yeah, he's got sort of the ears and the face, but...
That's really funny. He really is a Mickey-ish bear.
We have some instrument playing here. That's another thing about the Silly Symphonies is that every possible thing on screen, it can be a person, it can be an animal, it can be icicles, has the potential to become a musical instrument.
There's a sad aftermath to that, in my way of thinking, I think to many animation fans' way of thinking, that in time this became thought of as old-fashioned. Old hat, perhaps, is a better term than old-fashioned. That having inanimate objects come to life, that giving musical life to any object, any character on screen, was the kind of thing they did in the early days, and we've gone beyond that. That's old hat. And yet there's a wonderful charm and great life and vitality to these early talkie cartoons that was lost to some degree when the cartoons became more refined.
You lose a lot of the sense of musical performance in the later cartoons, where here, so much about these cartoons is trying to emphasize the fact that they even have sound at all. What better thing to do with sound than to do song and dance acts, and mostly the dancing. So we watch a lot of these early Disney cartoons and cartoons from all over, and we see so much musicking going on that when we look at later cartoons, we think, where did all the music go? It becomes much more about the dialogue.
Exactly. And it was a more musical world then. This was a time when people created their own entertainment at home in the parlor. People would sing. Families would have a community sing. At theaters, there would be sing-alongs. And, of course, Max Fleischer had his sing-along cartoons with the bouncing ball. There were pianos in every parlor, or so it seemed, or pump organs. And it was a world of music. Today, we receive music. We don't make music quite the way people did at this time.
And they are definitely making music right now. They seem to be very happy that the groundhog has not seen his shadow. Uh-oh, there it is. Darn it. That is one thing I love about these cartoons, is that you never need an excuse to be dancing or to be making music, that it's just completely what it's about. That's the entire reason for being there.
So many of the conventions of musical accompaniment that we hear in these early talkie cartoons really do come from the silent film era, because silent films, as most film buffs certainly know, were never silent. They were always accompanied by music. Either it was a piano or an organ or a full orchestra.
There was always something going on. There might be a few moments of silence here or there, but we have so many different kinds of things happening. Here, especially, we have all these kinds of mood cues for winter and for the animals running away and for the skating. I mean, it's just a great collection of different kinds of sounds of the late 20s, not the early 30s.
Because decades don't, in real life, stop and start on a dime.
The music is going to continue whether it's 1929 or whether it's 1931.